Welcome to the Mariners Virtual Baseball Bash and this morning's media session.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you all for joining us today for the 6th of 7 virtual media sessions that will take place during the Mariners Baseball Bash. As a reminder to our media, this call is once again being carried live on our social channels, and we want to thank everyone for tuning in on all of our platforms. Fans watching on social media will have the opportunity to submit their own questions for a chance to have them answered live during this event. Just write your questions in the chat function, and we will select a few to be read during this call. For media, we will be using the raise hand feature. If you have a question, please press the raise hand button, and I will call on you. Our first guest today will be Mariners pitching coach, Pete Woodworth. Pete is entering his second season as Mariners pitching coach and his 6th season in the Mariners organization. He'll make a quick statement, and then we open the floor for questions. Go ahead, Pete.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, guys. Getting together, having this conversation means we're one day closer to spring training in the season. So excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right. Questions for Pete. We will start with first question, Ryan Divish.
Hey, Pete. There's been a lot of talk about the 6-man rotation and using it. What were your thoughts of what you saw last year in terms of development stuff, from start to start, and what are you hoping to gain from it this year?
Good question. I thought we saw a lot of positives from last year. Overall, health improved, increased, pitch grades, location, everything really that we measure seemed to take a step forward. You like to think that has had something to do with it. I know a handful of the guys enjoyed the not just the extra day of recovery, but more of the ability to spend that time in between starts to increase intensity and have more productive bullpen sessions or throwing sessions or training sessions with Cliffy or KT. I just felt like the process production in between starts was increased and led to better results and led to better health. So hoping that it continues this year. Speaking with Chris Flexen coming from the KBO, that's kind of the schedule that he was on. So I know he was kind of excited that it'll be a similar type routine that he saw success with as well this past year.
All right, next question, Daniel Kramer.
Hey, Pete, kind of building off of that, the extra day of rest also means an extra day of work for each of your guys. How does that impact your day-to-day and your job in game planning and tailoring routines for all these guys?
From the routine aspect, and baseball players, and I think starting pitchers are probably the most routine-oriented people that I've been around. So it did take a little bit for those guys to adapt, to evolve, and kind of figure out what those 5 days in between look like instead of 4. And it was pretty fluid, I would say, player to player, but it didn't take long for those guys to find their ideal routine. And I remember probably after the second start, it kind of came pretty concrete. So it was easy to roll with from then. And then you're tweaking and making adjustments based off opponents or what have you. But the kind of once you find that routine, once you have it written down and pretty stable from all aspects, then it just becomes like any other year, like any other day. Comes pretty easy to execute.
Did you guys have kind of like a specific plan, like, hey, with this extra day, we'd like you to work on this problem or this pitch or taking the time to just take a rest? Was there specific plans for each guys with the extra day?
Yes and no. Everybody has their own specific goals and player plans that they're looking to execute and attack. But depending on the guy, depending on the start, depending on the week, depending on how they feel, I felt like more closer to the end of the season, guys were taking that first day after was more of a recovery day. From more from throwing. They still did their work in the training room and with Cliffy and with the strength guys, but you were able to kind of spread out your volume of throwing, so that bullpen day you can have more intensity, you can have more focus. If there is a pitch design aspect, I know early on Taiwan was working on pitch design with a slider, so that bullpen session, instead of 2 or 3, 4 sliders just to make sure it's still working, to command it to certain locations. Now you can dive a little bit deeper. You can spend a little bit more time. You can use 8 to 12, maybe even 15 to really develop that pitch or get one step closer to getting the results that you want to see with that certain pitch. But there wasn't like specific pitch design days. Everybody kind of had their own plans.
Next question, Corey Brock.
Hey, Woody. I know you guys offered the opportunity for many of the young pitchers to sit in on Marco's pre-start meetings. Obviously, a guy that does a lot of meticulous preparation. Will dive into the numbers. Will look for every edge to kind of give himself an advantage, which makes a lot of sense, obviously. What do you think the tangible benefit was for those guys having done that? And as you really sat with Marco for the first time, how impressed were you with, just exactly how he laid out what he wanted to do each night?
Yeah, great question. Marco starts are obviously fun to watch from the dugout, fun to watch from the bullpen. But yeah, one of the highlights of that day is him and the catchers working through the starting pitcher meeting. Like you said, very meticulous. Really just knows himself extremely well. Knows the opponent, knows the situation, knows the stadium, knows, like you said, every aspect of the game. But more than anything, knows his strengths, his arsenal, and his plan really well. So for guys that sat in, for whether it was other players, coaches, catchers, them being able to hear the simple yet concrete kind of DNA blueprint that Marco brings to every meeting, and it definitely helped those younger pitchers, instead of going in and having like 8 different plans. This is what I'm going to do the first time and the second time and third time. And if it goes this way, then we're going to veer this way. If he zigs, we're going to zag. It kind of showed them that it can be simpler than that, especially if you know who you are and you can stick to that plan and stay confident in that plan.
Next question, Shannon Dreher.
Hi, Pete. Good to see you. This offseason, how much contact have you been in with the pitchers? Has it been similar to what you would normally be able to do? Did you go down to Arizona? What have you been able to see? And were guys better able to get their work in and what they would normally do this time around than, say, as opposed to when things shut down and there were guys that just couldn't do anything?
Yeah. I think we are much better suited for the situation now after going through the quarantine. I think with the increase in Zoom meetings, we're able to see guys' faces a lot more than we were in the past off seasons. Didn't have the opportunity to go travel and see guys a ton. I was able to see Sheffield in Nashville throw a bullpen, but not a ton of guys in Florida and didn't really travel a ton. But yeah, learning from the quarantine and the improvements in technology communications has definitely helped. We've had a ton of meetings via Zoom. We've had a ton of meetings with our catchers about our pitchers every week. So the overall communication hasn't increased tremendously. And then I think guys kind of, made mistakes and figured some things out during the quarantine of how they optimally need to prepare with the bare minimum that they can if the situation arises. And we had guys show up to summer camp not quite prepared like you would for a normal season because of those circumstances. So whether guys move to Arizona or whether guys just kind of learn from those experiences, I feel like our preparation this offseason is a lot better than the quarantine, and guys are in much better positions coming into spring training 21 than summer camp 2.0.
Next question will go to Keizo.
What did you hear for Yusei and what he needs to do in the spring training, particularly? And also, can you describe about the role for Kuma in a new position?
For the first one, we saw a huge kind of, a completely different arsenal with Yusei this past year. He spent the last offseason building this machine, and everything improved. All the stuff improved. The velocity improved. Just kind of became a bigger, better, stronger pitcher. So now that he has the tools and weapons, this offseason was more focused on how to use those weapons and learning about how they move and where he can use them optimally. So basically, last offseason built the stuff. This offseason commanding the stuff more and becoming a little bit more focused on controlling it than just the actual stuff. And with Kuma, I don't have a ton on that. I had the privilege to, I didn't coach him, but he came to Modesto when I was there a couple years back when he did a rehab start. So we spent a little bit of time together, but looking forward to being around him and especially for our guys to get a little bit of his experience and mentorship.
Putting together everything into the performance at the actual game for Yusei is probably the most difficult thing as a pitcher. So what do you think let's say like one thing like really particular that he needs to be just before the opening day?
It's a good question. I think the overall just confidence in all four pitches. He's got new weapons, and it's difficult. And a lot of guys go through this. They see a velo jump or they see some stuff change, movement changes. Yusei's stuff got really good, and I think the biggest thing for him is understanding and trusting how good that stuff is. He doesn't have to be cute. He can be a lot more aggressive with the stuff that he has. So I think that's the biggest challenge for him, and that's what spring training will be for him once guys start getting in the box, is just kind of proving to himself how good this stuff is and how he can use it in and around the zone.
Thank you.
Next, we have a question from our social platforms. Go ahead, Ian.
Hey, Pete. We're taking a question from Ben, who's watching with us here on YouTube. He was hoping you could talk a little bit about your transition in 2020 when you jumping from the AA level to being the Mariners pitching coach.
Good question. The stadiums were a little bit nicer. No, overall, it wasn't a huge adjustment. One of the biggest pieces of advice I got from other coaches that have done similar transitions was it's 60 feet 6 inches. They're right-handed and left-handed pitchers that are not or are never finished products. They're constantly wanting to develop and get better and grow and improve, which is no different than low A, high A, double A, triple A. So don't have this idea that everybody's got it figured out. Keep showing up every day and coach your tail off. And but really the biggest differences was bus rides or planes. Stadiums were a little nicer. Surprisingly enough, there was more people at the games in Double A than there were last year in the big leagues. But I think that had something to do with with the pandemic. But overall, we just try to treat it like it was the same.
Next question, Daniel Kramer.
Kind of building off of that, and this is a caveat because of the pandemic and such a weird year, but what were some of your takeaways about your new job in your first year? Was there anything that you maybe learned about yourself, the team, the game that maybe you didn't even envision that you would learn?
I think that kind of what I just said was the biggest thing I learned. And I hearing it was one thing, but it took a little bit. It took a couple weeks to kind of really trust that. Opening day in Houston was even regardless of 40,000 people or 0 people. It was still, I kind of put it on this pedestal, but I think overcoming that and just knowing that the job is the job, regardless of where the office is or what the jersey looks like. The job is to be prepared and help these guys develop into the best pitchers, athletes, teammates, brothers, husbands that they can. So that was probably the biggest learning experience for me, even knowing that was kind of the biggest obstacle going into it.
Next question, Ryan Divish.
The progress of Sheffield and Dunn going into the season, what did you think they took away? And I know they both had goals. Sheffield wanted to work on that changeup, kind of refine this two-seam, and Dunn just kind of wanted to get back some of the lost velocity and life that the shutdown caused. Where are you seeing with them, or what have you heard about them?
Good question. Both those guys kind of went to work this offseason. Dunny spent a lot of time working on the body and kind of changing some things about how he moves and the athleticism. He just got to Arizona last week. Everything looks good. He came into spring training last year looking really good too. So I think he's on his way to accomplishing those goals. And then I got the opportunity to see Chef a couple weeks ago in Nashville throw a bullpen. And he's been working out with his brother Jordan, who just got Rule 5 by the Rockies. So he's got the facility, he's got the throwing partner, and it helps that his throwing partner throws 100. So Chef looks great. The changeup is something that'll come along more in these next couple of weeks, and then once we get to spring training, and just kind of once the intensity gets closer to 100, then you can start seeing how that changeup, how that separation works off the fastball. Tough to really measure it in throwing programs in the off season, but both those guys are coming off solid seasons and put together some good work this off season, ready to go.
Next question, Shannon Dreher.
Jerry DiPoto last week talked about the rotation and said that there were 4 spots that were basically filled, and 2 of your younger pitchers, one of them that you were just talking about a little bit, were among those that would compete for the final 2 spots. In particular, what would you like to see from Justin Dunn and also Nick Margevicius in taking that next step forward?
With Dunny, I'd like to see him really kind of cut it loose. I'd like to see him kick it into 5th gear. He's kind of gotten the rookie mistakes out of the way, although they do seem to pop up throughout the career. But can kind of put those failures and learn from them, and really hit the ground running. And where we saw Chef this past year, just become a lot more comfortable in knowing who he is, and was just able to be himself and let it come out during the game, let it come out every day. But I think that's a big step for Dunny this year. I'd like to see him just be a lot more comfortable in knowing who he is. That way, when it is game time, he can just flip the switch on and put it into 5th gear and go. With Marg took a huge strides forward last year. Lot to be excited with Marg. You know, with the question about Marco's game planning, Marg is right there behind it. It was very impressive to see a fairly young pitcher have that much pride in the preparation, meticulous video, looking over the numbers, going over the starter game plans, communicating with the catchers, everything that you'd want. He was very good at that, very intelligent, similar to what we've been talking about, like knows his stuff, is very into the information and has kind of used that to his advantage, which can be a lot at times, but the more you understand it, the more you're able to kind of eliminate all the noise. So it just becomes much simpler of what the tasks are in whether it's a bullpen or a game. So the simplification and the growth of Marg was impressive this last year. And he's getting bigger and stronger and kind of knows his past. So excited to see what shows up in Peoria in a couple of weeks.
Next question, Daniel Kramer.
Pete, who are you most excited to see in spring training and why?
Well, that's a tough question.
Sorry.
I love the off season. I love spending time back in Florida with the family. Obviously with the 1-year-old, love every day I get to spend with him. But shoot, I miss all these guys. I can't wait to see them all. I'd have to say Kendall Graveman. Not just a pleasure to be around, but dude's on a mission. Had high hopes for him, high expectations for him last year. He came into spring training. He was a veteran presence. Immediately took over the clubhouse. Guys gravitate towards him. Great teammate, great human, great competitor. But during quarantine, like I said, just kind of went on a mission and came back to summer camp with a lot of new toys and with added velo, and just had high hopes for him. And you put the competitor with the leader and the person. You wanted to see this guy go out there. And then what happened with the tumor in the neck and kind of sidelining him was tough on him. It was tough on everybody. It was a tough presence to lose in the clubhouse, in the rotation, in the bullpen, what have you. And then him coming back and kind of as soon as he showed back up, things took a turn for the better, and you saw a lot of the things that we were seeing early on. And so I'm anxious to see him. I'm anxious to see him kind of come in for the first time as a reliever and really taking hold of this role and really taking hold of the bullpen. And for what he did with the rotation with Dunny and Chef and Marg and these young guys, him and Marco and Taiwan were huge parts of their development. So I'm anxious to see what his leadership and character can do for the young guys in the bullpen, the Gerbers and Miseviches and all these guys that are going to be making their way up there this year.
All right, I think we have time for one or two more questions with Pete. We'll go to Corey Brock next.
Woody, you just touched on Kendall a little bit, but you guys have made some notable changes to the back end of that bullpen, or at least how it should probably look. I know that was kind of that was a tough spot last year, running a lot of guys through there, trying to find something that worked. But it's probably no coincidence that the guys that you've added, and I'll go ahead and throw Gravy in that because the uptick in velo, a lot of guys that can miss some bats. I think I know the answer to this, but what's the value of that, and what do you make of these new faces that can maybe help you secure the last, 6 3 outs of a game?
Yeah. So far, it's been a huge upgrade, and yeah, a lot of big stuff. And kind of the beauty of last year was, not throwing guys into role, but challenging guys with different situations and seeing what they have. It was difficult at times. Guys may have been in situations that were a little bit over their head, but we got to test Johan Ramirez, we got to test Misevich, we got to test Gerber, a lot of these guys, which that experience and maybe even that failure is huge for their development. Now you have a handful of guys with experience, with big stuff, with like you said, ability to miss bats. It's just going to make for a more competitive, definitely spring training, but more competitive season and interesting conversations pre-series and pre-game to kind of piece this together now that the chess pieces are a little bit bigger and stronger.
All right. Thank you, Pete. I think that's all we have time for today. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us, and we'll be right back with our next guest. All right, welcome back, everybody. We are now joined by Mariners hitting coach Tim Laker. Tim returns for his third season as the Mariners hitting coach after joining the Mariners in 2019. We will now take questions for Tim. First question, Corey Brock.
Hi, Tim. Happy New Year. I guess I'll get the obvious one out of the way. Last year's experience having to work remotely, the different challenges that put on your plate, how I imagine there's a point of frustration initially, then you have to move on from that and get your work done. But what was that experience like for you?
Honestly, it stunk. I felt really left out. I tried to make the most of it. I just remember being at home, in between the two spring trainings, and then I saw that we were starting spring training. I was really excited to get going, and then I got a call that said that I wasn't going to go because I am a high-risk individual. And not too long after that, I got a call from Perry Hill right away too, complaining too that he wasn't getting to go. So it was it kind of pulled the rug right out from under us, but I made the the most of it. I tried to do the best I could, just helping out. Had a lot of phone calls with Jared DeHart. I got the baseball package. I watched every at bat. I talked to JD after every game. Exchange ideas, told him what I saw from my end. Because, watching it on TV versus watching it from the side of the dugout, you get a completely different perspective. So that was, it was a challenge, but, we tried to make the most of it. But I really missed being there, during the game in the cages, just with guys just kind of grinding it out.
Next question, Daniel Kramer.
Hey, Tim, kind of going beyond that, were you able to develop a specific routine and system to kind of implement for yourself during this process? And, beyond speaking with Jared on a regular basis, were you talking with the players as well?
Yeah, when I did some, but I tried really going through JD because he was the one there with him every day and having the conversations with him. And I wanted to, I felt it was probably better to go kind of through him and Q, rather than kind of having separate conversations and having that, maybe that little disconnect between what I said and what actually they hear, which oftentimes is kind of different. So really tried going through him, just so he's the one that could relay the message, so we knew exactly kind of like that it was getting through and what they heard and what was said. So my routine was, I joined a golf club because I figured since I was home, I'd take advantage of it. So I'd go and play golf during the day. I'd take my dog to the dog park with me and my wife. So spend a lot of time at the dog park. I'd get home for opening, first pitch, and I'd sit there and watch the game. I'd watch all the at bats, and then usually about an hour and a half after the game, I'd get a call from Jared. And, we kind of just talk about, everything that went on during the day, who was looking good, who's scuffling, conversations they had in the cage, how the cage work went, game at bats. We talk about next night's pitchers, just, kind of how we're going to approach them, things like that. So I kind of got into a little bit of a flow, but, obviously wasn't as much, getting to talk to the players as much as I would have liked to, but we just felt like with the situation we were kind of put in, then it was kind of for us best just to kind of use JD as kind of the voice for last year.
Next question from Ryan Divish.
Hey, Tim, what kind of precautions do you have to take for spring training this year? And given your medical history, have you applied for vaccine because of kind of your at-risk nature? I don't know how all this stuff works, but I mean, for your protection alone, what do you have to do?
Yeah, my plan is to take it as soon as it's available to me. I talked to my, my doctor about 2 weeks ago, and even though I am high risk, I wasn't eligible to get it yet to kind of jump to the head of the line. So my plan is to get it as soon as I'm able to.
I guess that's one benefit of Perry being so old, that he can probably jump ahead of you.
Yeah, don't tell him that.
But until then, obviously they're going to be masks and everything, but how do you make sure that you operate safely?
Yeah, I'm just going to be smart. I don't venture out too far from home. I don't see very many people. I kind of keep to myself and my wife and close friends and family. And I'll just be smart and be diligent, kind of mask up and, wash my hands and just be smart as far as exposing myself to, a lot of people.
Next question from Corey Brock.
Tim, last season, obviously, we saw big strides from J.P. Crawford defensively. Goes without saying what he accomplished, Gold Glove and everything. I'm curious from an offensive perspective where he is with his swing decisions, strike zone discipline. Looks like he was hitting at the top of the order. He was willing to take pitches and it certainly can take a walk. It looks like that's part of his game. But where is he at offensively, and what does he need to do next?
Yeah, I think with JP, that's one of the best things about him is that he does make good swing decisions, and I think that always saves him. Even when he's not, at his best with his swing or he's not getting hits, he still has the ability to kind of just put together a good at bat and take his walks. I am in Arizona right now. I did have just seen him the last 3-4 days. And he really, to be honest with you, he really looked good. And I know we hear that a lot of, in the off season, how great guys look, but, he's been down here the whole, he moved out here last year. He spent the whole off season down here. He's been, hitting 5 days a week for, the last few months. He's in the gym working out. He's a lot stronger. And I think that's really had a big carryover into how he swings the bat, just to his strength. He just looks a lot more stable, in his legs, a lot more grounded. Looks like he's handling he's made a few adjustments where, a lot of times I think over the last couple of years, we saw him kind of struggle to pitches more on the inner part of the plate where for me, he doesn't hold his posture. He kind of falls.
Oh, looks like we might have lost Tim.
We're in.
Oh, one sec, Tim. I think we're having some connectivity issues here. Welcome back, everyone. Sorry for the technical issues we just had there. Next, we will go to our social platforms for a question from social.
Hey, Tim, we have a fan named Aiden watching on YouTube who'd like you to talk about, since joining the Mariners, who have you seen the most growth from as a hitter?
Can you say that one more time?
Yeah, sorry about that. We have a fan named Aiden on YouTube who'd like to know who you've seen the most growth from as a hitter during your tenure as a Mariner.
Well, I think without a doubt, like just Kyle Lewis. I guess that's kind of the obvious answer. Just the what he's done, last year. Just I think in a lot of things, just his ability to hit breaking balls, to drive the ball to all parts of the field. I mean, he's a guy that's had power since he got here, but I thought he made like tremendous strides last year and showed that what he did in September the year before wasn't just a fluke.
Next question, Shannon Dreher.
Other than JP, have you had the opportunity to see any other hitters this winter?
Yeah, you know what? I saw Evans down here, Sam Haggerty. I saw Ty France a couple weeks ago. So I've seen Tim Lopes, but he's no longer with us too. But yeah, so I've gotten a chance to see a few. I get a lot of video from guys. They send it to me and JD throughout the off season, and just stay in touch with them.
One more question here. I was kind of curious, kind of building on Aiden's question here a little bit. From spring training to the restart of the season, what was something that jumped out at you, or a pleasant surprise that perhaps you saw in somebody?
From last year?
Yeah.
Gosh. Well, it's kind of a tough question because I didn't get to even go to spring training 2.0. So, I think like everybody said, like, was just really surprised, maybe not surprised, but really how fast Kyle Lewis like turned into the player that he turned into last year. I mean, he was, in so many ways, he was like just exceptional. And I don't know that any of us expected it to happen like that quick. Especially the first month of the season. And I know spring training 2.0, I wasn't there, but I talked to people every day. I saw a lot of the at-bats on video and stuff like that. And just how good he was from the first spring training to the second spring training, and then throughout the season was really it was really fun to watch, and it's something I think that we're all kind of marveled at.
Next question, Daniel Kramer.
Pete, kind of building off of that, what are the next steps for him? When he came in, the strikeout numbers were a little high, but you guys talked about that being a pretty fixable problem. The consistency, and obviously a much longer season ahead, but like, what are the next steps for Kyle Lewis?
I think probably just the maybe swing decisions and just tightening up that. And he is a guy that has swing and miss, and we're going to see that with guys, especially guys with his kind of power. But I think just trying to cut down on some of that to make it a little bit more manageable. And I think he does those couple things. Like the sky's the limit for this guy. He's got so much talent. He's super smart. He's really dedicated. He's a hard worker. He checks so many of the boxes of the things you want to see from a good major league player, a guy who's going to really have like a sustainable career. And I think he, make up everything. This guy's just off the charts in every category that I could think of. And I think for him just to make that kind of the next step and to keep evolving, I think is like I said, just putting together better at bats that you might see from like a guy who's had 10 years in the big leagues, who knows the pitchers in the league, gets better at kind of scouting reports and putting together a plan and sticking to it, and just taking that next step as like a hitter.
All right, do we have any more questions for Tim? Ryan Divish.
Hey, Tim, I just was curious what your thoughts were on Kelenic and his approach and his swing and things like that. He spends a lot of time on it. He likes to post videos of it, but I was just curious what your impressions were in the brief amount of time you got to work with him. He certainly doesn't lack the confidence.
No, that's one of the things that jumps out at you is his confidence. It's another level. It's funny, but I think a lot of people, they see a young kid with that much confidence and they think he's cocky. But he came in last year and everybody knew he was confident, but he comes in, he gets his work. He's one of the first guys in the cage. He's got his head down and just gets his work in. And I think he made a really good impression on the older guys in camp. Just how good he was, how he worked. The thing that blows me away is a lot of guys, I think, especially at his age, are just hoping to get to the big leagues. They hope they get there. They hope they have a big league career. This guy's that's not his mindset. Like his mindset is when am I getting to the big leagues? I should be there already. And his mindset is like, how great can I be? Like, how many All-Star games can I make? Can I make the Hall of Fame? Like, it's like ridiculous when you think about it. Like, most guys are just happy to be there, and that's not him at all. He's not thinking about that one bit. He's got his sights set so much higher than that, and I think it really helps him in a way. Like, he's not intimidated by guys that have, been in the big leagues that are successful in the big leagues. He's like, I don't care that this guy's got 7 years in the big leagues, is made All-Star games. Like I feel like I can hit this guy. Like I think his stuff's not good enough to get me out. Like it's a different mentality. Something I've never been around on a young guy with that kind of like self-confidence, and it's really kind of refreshing, to be honest with you.
He has, coming up, he had a great hit tool in terms of, they thought, gap to gap, whatever, just the control of the bat. But he's been really bulking up to generate power. Is there a fine line between getting too focused on the power quotient versus the hitability that he's always displayed?
I definitely think so. Because he is like so good. And it's a really natural swing. You don't see that many guys just kind of get into pro ball and just hit from day one and just move up the way he has and put up the kind of numbers. It's kind of rare to see, and that's why you see him so high on the prospect list. But obviously, you don't want to see a guy get so caught up in the power numbers that he loses the ability. Because I think he's a guy that's going to hit for power. I think he's going to be a guy that hits for average, that uses the whole field and puts together good at bats. And so, yeah, there's definitely a fine line of being too consumed with like putting up power numbers, but I think he's, I think he'd like to hit for power, but this guy's not going to hit. He's not going to be happy hitting 270, 280 either. He's a guy that I think with just the way as good as he thinks he can be, like he's not going to be satisfied unless he's hitting 300. So I know he does want to hit for power, but I don't think that he's going to be a guy that's going to get too caught up in that and consumed with it, where it kind of takes away from his ability to be a complete hitter.
Next question, Daniel Kramer.
Pete, have you gotten a chance to talk with Mitch at all? And, with his case specifically, given everything he's been through, how do you guys kind of ease him back into, a big league season here?
Yeah, JD actually went and saw him. I've spoken to him, but JD went and actually saw him maybe a month ago. And really, it was, we're just taking it slow with him, just where he was at, as much time as he was taking off, we're just hoping like he can show up ready to go. So it wasn't anything we were he was working on or anything. We just wanted to make sure that he was progressing just kind of in his work and able to show up like day one in spring training and be able to go. But to be honest with you, he looks really good. I don't know if any of you guys have seen any video or anything of him, but like he looks really strong. Even last year, like when you saw him, he was really thin. He lost a lot of mass and strength, and that was the thing I was most like pleasantly surprised about, was just how good he looked physically. I mean, he looks in really good shape, looks strong, and he's a guy we're hoping has no setbacks and can just pick up kind of from where he left off really in 2018 when he was really good. Because I mean, he was a really good player, before he got hurt, and there's no reason, he's still young, he's still now healthy, that he can't be a really big part of what we're doing here.
Anything else for Tim? All right, thank you, Tim, for taking the time to join us today.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
That's all we have for today's call, but the Baseball Bash will continue with more events later this afternoon. At 12 p.m., we will have a virtual clubhouse chat with Mark McLemore, Jamie Moyer, and Arthur Rhodes, followed by a 2 p.m. media session with Mitch Haniger. At 7 p.m., we will have the 2001 virtual roundtable, and for more information, please go to mariners.com/baseballbash for the full schedule. Again, I just wanted to thank you all for taking the time to join us today, and go M's.
Thanks for joining us. Be sure to visit mariners.com/baseballbash for this week's full schedule.